we take the story on. Anne was getting help from some advisors who were trying their best to try and help her. And one of the things that did crop up in this time was that Anne was awarded, after a long battle, £13,000 from the Criminal Injuries Compensation Authority. But there was no record of any crime having been committed. So public money was given to a woman who officially had not been the victim of crime. How could it be? To shut them up, obviously. But no crime had been committed, as far as law was concerned. So, time went on, and about a year ago, I was invited in to try and see if I could do anything to help the story along, to try and bring the people to justice, and to perhaps bring the story into the public domain, which I've tried hard to do. When I started my investigations, I had the same kind of problems. Everybody wanted to block it and everything like that. But we did have a breakthrough with the media on the 19th of April, 2009, when journalists from the News of the World took up the story in a rather sort of muted form, but it picked up on the fact about the payment from the Criminal Injuries Compensation Authority. I did a story on Hollie, which is also picked up by the local paper where Anne and Hollie now live in Shropshire, where they had to flee to because of the threats and abuse that they were suffering at the time. They had to escape from Aberdeen and from their home country, Scotland. Now, when this became apparent that things were not moving in any way at all, we had another bit more support, because suddenly we got a call from the BBC Scotland in Glasgow, from one of their senior investigators, a man called Mark Daly, who some of you may remember as doing something about the secret policeman, where he covertly joined the police force in Cheshire to actually find about racism that existed in the police force. And for this, he was granted an award, and there was a big programme on it, and he became very famous. He approached Anne and Hollie and myself and said, BBC would like to do a big story on this. Could we assist them? Could we provide the documentation, which Anne had very, very skillfully retained? And but it had to be on the basis that it was an exclusive for the BBC. It was confirmed that 2 programmes had been commissioned, one on BBC Television Scotland, one on BBC Radio Scotland, and that Panorama were going to do a full story that would be broadcast nationally. Mark Daly, having all the evidence, everything that he could see about this story, because it was backed up, all the contradictions, all the false things that the police and the judicial people and even people from the National Health Service had made, all the false statements, all there, all blatant, and they were happy to go ahead with it. Mark told me that this was a story that would go round the world, because this is one of the worst stories I've ever heard. But I know there are other cases in Scotland concerning paedophilia that we're looking into as well. And of course the level of corruption by the authorities made this doubly appalling. Now, this went on for about 6 weeks. We had lots of discussions with the BBC team, and everything was set to go. On the 10th of June 2009, I received a call from a distraught Mark Daly. And he said, he said, Robert, he said, I'm sorry, I've got some really bad news for you and Anne and Hollie. I said, what's that, Mark? He said, we can't do the programme. I said, what do you mean you can't do the programme? You said, you've got in writing that you're going to do the programme. Well, how can it be? He says, I can't talk about it. He says, well, we were threatened. We've been told we cannot not only do Hollie's story, but we can actually do no more investigations into any stories concerning paedophilia in Scotland. If we do, we will be sacked. The 3 of us, that is Mark Daly, Cathy Long from BBC Radio Scotland, and Liam McDougall of Panorama. We will be sacked. I said, Mark, you can't allow this to happen. He said, well, we fought our corner. He said, we believe the story. It's absolutely 100%. But that is what we were told. So I said, Mark, who told you this? I said, who told you? And what kind of person would want to prevent a story like this coming out? So terrible. This sweet little girl and and 7 other child victims that we knew about. who would actually want to stop this story coming out? He said, I can't tell you, Robert. He said, I can't talk to you anymore. He said, I can't tell you. He says, we'll all be sacked. So, obviously, I pressed with the BBC, with the Director General Mark Thompson and the head of the BBC Trust, Sir Michael Lyons. Of course, did I get anywhere with anybody? No. All I got letters saying, Mr. Green, if you wish to complain, we have a particular forum for that, the complaints department of such and such a place, as if I were complaining about someone using a naughty word at 7 o'clock in the evening. That is how it was treated. Mark Daly never contacted me again, apart from sending a letter apologising to Anne and making a few unfair comments, but nevertheless saying that he believed in the case and he believed everything that he had been told. Now, this obviously presented us with a setback, because we were convinced that if the BBC had got hold of it, which they promised to do, the story would have been out last summer and the world would have known about it. But of course this was a setback for us. Nevertheless, we persisted, kept the pressure on. One of the things I must say in this case, working for Anne and Hollie, they are the two of the bravest women I've ever come across. Nothing frightens them. They've been through hell, but they are so determined, not only for justice for Hollie, but justice for the other children that have been abused, and all the other children in Scotland who are being abused now and will be abused in the future because of the inaction and the collaboration of the authorities. So it's absolutely determined. Nothing will frighten them. In fact, in August last year, they were intimidated. A shot was fired at them with the window of their home in Shropshire, a quiet little village where nothing ever happens, where crime is virtually unknown. But it bounced off the window, fortunately. But it was at head height, and either of them could have been injured or even killed.